Hello and welcome to this webinar from Jigsaw Education Group about enrichment in RE, focusing on trips and visitors. So whilst we will, as I said, be focusing on RE, there are aspects of this training that hopefully you will be able to apply to any other curriculum subjects that you might lead. My name is Sarah and I will be taking you through today's training. I am a Jigsaw RE advisor for Southwest and I have experience as a Key Stage 2 teacher, as an RE lead, as a RE hub lead, and also worked on wider curriculum development across my trust. So we've got three aims for today's training. We're going to think about the value of enrichment in the RE curriculum. We're going to look at some practical tips and advice for arranging trips to places of interest or engaging with school speakers coming into your school. And then we're going to end by taking a look at the materials Jigsaw RE provides to help you to do all of that even more easily. So I'd like to start by thinking about what we mean by enrichment. This is my personal definition that I've sort of taken from a variety of different sources and what it means to me. So for me, enrichment is about taking children beyond the statutory requirements of the curriculum and enables them to develop their understanding and skills in relation to real life contexts beyond the familiar school environment. So it's about not just providing children with what we have to, but thinking about actually enriching that experience, giving them more, and also really focusing on the context of their learning as well as the content. So it also links to areas including cultural capital, community cohesion, British values, personal development, SMSC, and your school might have its own vision and value statements, or your trust, and I'm sure that within those there is an area which really links strongly to enrichment opportunities. So in terms of RE, in some syllabi, it's a requirement to have to visit a certain number of places of interest or engage with particular living people of faith from your local area at particular key stages. And for some others, it's maybe a recommendation, but it's definitely best practice. And there are plenty of opportunities for enrichment that I'm not going to touch on today. For example, brilliant books, both fiction and non-fiction, that can support your curriculum, and using artefacts to enrich your lessons. But today's focus is just going to be about trips and visitors. So thinking about trips and visitors really is part of a worldviews approach to RE. And if you want some more information about that, we do have other webinars available through Jigsaw RE, or plenty of information on our portal as well. So this is a quote from the recent research review in RE from Ofsted. And they talked about subject leaders also need to be alert to the ways in which the authenticity of traditions can be lost. Sometimes subject leaders plan for pupils to learn generalisations. For example, Christians believe or Islam is. And this becomes problematic when the planned representations give the impression that traditions are given, fixed and stable, and do not attend to fluidity, change and dynamism of living traditions as traditions in transition. So actually, we need to be really mindful about the representations we give to our pupils so that they actually don't see faith or belief as something that is stuck in the past or is very fixed, but is something that actually applies to people in their school, in their community, in their local area, and is a key part of their lives today. And actually meeting members of different worldview communities enables pupils to learn about those authentic lived experiences and really opens their minds beyond any preconceived ideas or stereotypes they might have. And then I've put in bold, that's my bold I've put there from the Ofsted report, it's crucial that subject leaders plan well-informed representations that do not present pupils with unsustainable stereotypes and poor generalisations. And that word plan there is really important. This is not something that happens by chance. As a subject leader, it is something that you have to put some effort into at the start and make some really thoughtful choices, which I'm going to help guide you through. And returning again to that theme of planning here again from the Ofsted Research Review, it's important to be really clear about the outcome or the objective when you are thinking about meeting other people from your community, either by visiting them or them coming to you. So what they say is leaders and teachers of RE often provide opportunities for pupils to encounter faith practitioners, to meet them and listen to their experiences. These can be valuable experiences for pupils because they are genuine and organic and enable the pupils to learn about differences in the way that religious and non-religious people live. Again, that's my bold there. However, sometimes teachers can be unclear about the curriculum object when pupils meet faith practitioners. The curriculum object might be any number of things, such as learn about the experiences of faith practitioners, learn how knowledge and religion might be gained through interviews, for pupils to recognise their own assumptions as they listen to an individual from a faith community, or to apply previously learned generalisations about religion that can be tested through an encounter with lived faith practitioners. So given this range of possibilities, it's important for leaders and teachers to be clear about precisely what they expect pupils to learn from the encounter, and importantly, how that links to curriculum goals. And I think this is an interesting final sentence here. Otherwise, meeting faith practitioners may be enjoyable for pupils, but it is unlikely to lead to curriculum impact. And we'll come back to the why and the what of the planning to guide you through enrichment in a little bit. Okay, so imagine you are a curriculum lead, an RE lead, and you really want to build some enrichment into your curriculum by connecting with people in your local community. You're not quite sure how to go about it, so let's go through these steps. So I always think that the most important question is why? Why are we doing this? We know that our timetable is absolutely crammed full, and it's hard enough fitting in all the things we actually have to do, let alone extras. So I think we can flip that and think, we are doing this for our pupils, what are they going to gain from it? It's not an extra, it's going to be an essential. And one of the whys is thinking about your children in your school who you know best. What are their needs and what are their experiences? So it might be that you are working in a very diverse urban school and you actually want to make sure you are connecting with some of the different faith communities that are represented in your school population, in your parental community, but you want to encourage those bonds out of the classroom as well, or invite people in. And it could be the opposite, that you are in a rural school, you're in an area that's not very diverse, and actually if you don't take the time to build in enrichment experiences to take pupils beyond that school kind of bubble, they're not going to have them otherwise. So what are the experiences that your pupils will really benefit from when we're thinking about setting them up to be confident and capable members of society as they go on to their secondary stage or even beyond that? What is going to enrich their learning, but also, and here enrichment has a huge part to play, what's going to support their personal development? So some big questions to think about there, and you might not want to do that in isolation. That might be a conversation to have with colleagues. Once you've decided on why you want to have some of these experiences for your pupils, you then need to think realistically about what they might look like. So as I said, our timetables are already jam-packed with so many things that we're supposed to cover that I think enrichment works best when it's not an extra, but it is a way of delivering something that you're already going to cover. So you need to look about meaningfully working enrichment into your curriculum. There's no point taking a group of Year 2 children off to visit a mosque if actually they're not learning about Islam in Year 2. So what we need to make that fit in where it's meaningful and it's building onto children's actual learning that's happening. So making those choices about thinking about realistically where you can go or who you can connect with. So which year group is going to be best placed to make the most of this experience? Which particular worldviews do we want to make those enrichment experiences linked to? Which term will it fit in? For example, I wouldn't suggest putting too much in term 5 for year 6 because it's a busy time, or even term 6 for year 6. So if you're looking at year 6, you probably want to put things earlier on in the year. And again, you're probably not going to plan much for reception before terms 5 and 6. Is there a particular inquiry where actually building in an enrichment experience would be the most beneficial? Is it going to work best for you to take a trip out? Or is it better to invite a visitor into your school? Pros and cons for both, and we'll look at examples of both in a bit. So once you've decided what you'd like to do, it's then the tricky bit of who's going to help us? Who are we going to make those connections with? Particularly if you are new to an area or you feel a little bit isolated from the wider local community. But there are people out there who are able to help you and very, very happy to do so. So obviously, if you're a Jigsaw school, you can contact your RE advisor. We are a regional team, and part of the strength of that is that we have really good connections with different places of interest, with people from local faith communities in the areas we work in. There's also the RE Hub's website, which is open to everyone. They have two sections there. One is places of interest and one is school speakers. And in order to be linked on there and to have contact details displayed, representatives from those places have been through an hour and a half of sort of briefing and training and information. So they have a sort of a kind of accreditation. They have been working with the RE Hubs about how to best support schools with visits and trips. And the number of organisations and contacts on there is increasing each month as well. You can also contact your SACRE, your Standing Advisory Council on RE advisor, or your diocese advisor. They might be the same person sometimes. They will have lots of contacts in your area. You can find them on the website for either your local diocese or your SACRE. You might want to reach out and search and see if there's any interfaith groups in your area as well. And then also you've got your parent and carer community. So depending on your intake, you might be surprised about some of the worldviews that actually are represented in your school, and there might be people there who are happy to share their experiences. So those are a few key questions before you kind of dive into doing all of your detailed organisation. So once you've decided where you're going to go and what you're going to do, you need to think about preparing for that visit beforehand, and this can be weeks or months in advance. Your school might have a particular timeline set out for organising enrichment experiences. A pre-visit is really important. That's when the teaching staff go to visit the place you're going to be visiting beforehand, and I would recommend as many of those teaching staff who are going on the day to go on that pre-visit so that you're covered in case of absence and everyone feels really confident in knowing their way around. You can also invite people to come and meet you at school, or you could talk via phone call or video chat beforehand, but communication is really key to having a smooth enrichment visit. Your logistics will be a focus of that. What is the content of your visit going to be? Are there particular areas of learning that you'd like your host to cover? What's the timings? How long are you going to be there for? Is that going to work for you in terms of school lunches and things like that? The costs, some are free or might ask for a donation, or there might be a charge per pupil. How are you going to fund that? Transport as well is another consideration, and sometimes is seen as a barrier to enrichment, but we'll talk a little bit later about some creative ways around that. Risk assessments are hugely important, and again your school probably has a template that they would like you to use. When you go on your pre-visit, that's the perfect time to make notes about accessibility, access, car parking, hazards, if there's going to be any food or drink offered, that you need to be aware of pupils' dietary needs as well. All of those can be looked at and thought about on that pre-visit. DBS, if someone's coming in to talk at your school, what documentation are they going to be asked for when they turn up at reception? Let's make sure that the visit runs smoothly if everyone knows about that beforehand. And how are you going to pay? Some places might ask for a cheque, or some places might invoice after the event. So liaise with your finance department as well about how all that's going to work. And again, returning to that Ofsted research review, how are we going to maximise the impact on pupils and their learning? So being really clear on the curriculum focus. Yes, you might be coming to visit a synagogue, but what actually is it that you want the children to be learning about? Oh, well, actually, we're focusing on the Torah and we'd like to know all about that. There might be other things that come up in our visit, but that's a key area of learning. What do the pupils already know? Because it helps the person who's hosting you to pitch what they're going to be talking about. Is the person visiting or that you're visiting confident and comfortable with what a worldviews approach means? If you're using language in school that is worldviews approach language, for example, some Jews or many Muslims or many Buddhists or most Sikhs, rather than making generalizations and stereotypes, is the person you're talking to going to use that language as well? Are they going to be talking about their own individual worldview and saying that this is how they interpret beliefs and teachings, and that will fit in with a worldviews approach as well? We want to make sure that everyone is on the same page really about the language that we're using. And how are you going to support your pupils with additional needs on that visit? That's really worth thinking through and talking through with the people that you're going to be visiting or visiting you. And then the children, how are we going to help them prepare? For example, are there going to be special items of clothing that they need to wear? Do they need to cover their heads? Do they need to have their legs and arms covered? What special customs might there be? And I know when we used to go and visit a Sikh Gurdwara, we would practice in the classroom the week before. We would practice putting on our head coverings. We would practice bowing down to the Guru Granth Sahib, so that actually the children weren't doing that for the first time in a strange place. They were practicing and getting confident with that in their classroom in a familiar space. What you don't want to be doing is walking through the door and children are trying to tie on bandanas for the first time. So make sure that they are prepared as well and they have an idea of what to expect. And you might do that by looking at photos or videos of other examples of special buildings. You might collect questions in advance that the children really want to find out about, that you can prepare your host. You might want to have go over some key vocab that they might hear when they're there, so they're listening out for particular words. So to help the children get the most out of the visit, thinking about what preparation you can do for them. And then also communicating with parents and carers. If you're going out of school, it might be likely that you need some volunteers to come with you, so from a logistical point of view. But actually I think with something like this, it's really important to explain to parents why you are doing these experiences, what benefit it's going to be for the pupils. And with RE, we do have to bear in mind that parents do have a right of withdrawal. And I know that sometimes some parents don't feel comfortable with their children visiting particular places of worship. And as a school, you need to think about how you are going to manage that. And again, communication here is really key. So what provision would you make for those pupils? I know many families are not happy for children to visit a place of worship, but would be happy for their child to stay in and do some learning in the school about that place of worship, a worksheet or something like that. So different families do have that right of withdrawal, but make sure that's something that you are prepared for in advance of the day. So during the visit itself, hopefully you are able to relax and enjoy it a little bit and take it all in. I would recommend taking as many photos or videos as you can, especially obviously if you've checked with the venue and the host that is okay. That's going to be really helpful for your follow-up work. And in fact, if you think that on the day you might be a little bit busy, you might not be able to kind of manage your iPad as well as counting the children, that's another really good reason to go for a pre-visit beforehand and take some of those photos then, so that you've already got them banked up even before you go on your visit. Make a note of any particular key vocab or any additional knowledge that you find out that you didn't already know about, that you can build into your lessons and your learning. And if there's any particular responses or engagement from your pupils, that's a really good thing to note down as well. Great comments for reports about children who are particularly engaged in this, or to feedback at parents' evening. And top tip logistically, always keep an eye on the time. It's really easy in situations like this where you're counting children or moving from one place to another just to lose track of time because it's such an interesting event. But do keep an eye on the time and make sure you're not going to miss that coach back to school, or you're not going to suddenly have the rest of the school come into the hall for assembly while you're still having your session in there as well. And after the visit, how are you going to follow up this fantastic experience you've had? So you could follow it up in your classroom by creating a display. You could think about the work that pupils might do in their books or any class discussions. Are you going to share anything from your enrichment experience with other classes, perhaps in an assembly, or maybe you have a buddy or a partner class, older or younger age group? Are you going to communicate with the wider school community? Could you put something in the school newsletter? Or do you have an online learning platform like Seesaw or Class Dojo? Just a little picture and a few words. It really helps the wider community appreciate RE and kind of understand what it is that our pupils are doing. And it's important afterwards to reflect and feedback to a host who's had you at their place. Ask your school staff who went with you or your pupils any feedback that they have, and then you can make adjustments for next time. Because I think the big thing about enrichment is it can be quite overwhelming almost to plan the very first time you do it, but hopefully if we're talking about making meaningful curriculum links and developing our pupils' knowledge and skills, actually once we've done an enrichment event, it should then just become part of our curriculum map and our programme. So once you've done it the first time, the hard work's over and you can hopefully just tweak it going forwards. We're now going to take a look at some specific examples in Jigsaw RE where you could fit in these enrichment activities, and we're going to look at some resources that we've got on our portal to help you organise a brilliantly smooth trip out of school. So trips and visitors can be built into any part of the curriculum, but I'm going to look at a few specific lessons or inquiries which do particularly lend themselves to it. So I've got two extracts from some lesson previews here. So one is from age 8 to 9, Christianity Autumn 2, and that's the inquiry, what's the most significant part of the nativity story for Christians today? So in piece 3 there, it recommends you either to go on a visit to a local church or to invite some Christians into your classroom and ask them for their individual take on the nativity story and which for them is the most important part. Now, if you're not able to do that, we do in Jigsaw have some pre-prepared examples as well, but it would be lovely if you could get some authentic voices there. And then we've also got in that same age range, we've got the Summer 2 inquiry. Do people need to go to church to show they are Christians? And again, this particularly talks about rituals such as baptism and communion. So a perfect time to go out to a local church, to have the vicar there talk you through what those rituals look like, or to invite someone into your school to talk about their own personal experience of having been baptised or having taken part in communion. And alongside those suggestions, I've pulled together some other inquiries here in Jigsaw RE that lend themselves to enrichment opportunities. So in our EYFS curriculum for age 3 to 4 and 4 to 5, we have an inquiry about special places, and within that we look at a church, a mosque, a synagogue. So obviously I wouldn't recommend visiting all 3 of them on consecutive weeks with your reception children, but it might be that there's a possibility to go and visit one of those in that time frame, particularly if you've got one close to you, or to invite someone from those local places of worship into school. Ages 7 to 9 in Judaism, we've got inquiry 3. Does visiting the synagogue help Jewish children feel closer to God? That seems to me like a perfect place to put in a visit to a synagogue. And age 7 to 9 Islam, inquiry 1. Does praying at regular intervals help Muslims in their everyday lives? Well, you might go to a mosque for that, or actually that's a really good opportunity to invite a Muslim, or maybe a couple of different Muslims, to come into school and talk about prayer. So not just Many Muslims pray 5 times a day. Here are the rituals. That's very important and interesting for children to learn about, but for them to give their personal perspective on what it means to them. And inquiry 2, does completing a pilgrimage make a person a better Muslim? Wouldn't it be a fantastic opportunity for your children to be able to listen to someone talk about having gone on Hajj themselves and to be able to ask questions directly to that person? Again, in age 7 to 9 for Sikhi, inquiry 2, do Sikhs think that it's important to share? We have some lessons within that inquiry that focus on langar, so that would be a perfect opportunity to visit a Gurdwara, to see the langar kitchen, the langar hall, and to maybe experience that as well. And in age 9 to 12 range, we have inquiries across all of the religious worldviews about how followers show commitment to God and their beliefs. And for our non-religious worldviews, humanism, and we've got ethical veganism coming, we talk about inspirational people and the impact they have on people today. So those particular inquiries would be perfect opportunities to either invite people in for them to reflect and to answer questions about how their belief impacts them and how they have committed to it in their lives, or to go and visit some of those places of interest in that context. So I just want to showcase some fantastic resources that we do host on our Jigsaw portal. So this is a project called Crossing the Bridges, which was run by the Pan Berkshire Sacrays a few years ago, and they worked really hard to put together some support materials for schools trying to go on trips out of school, or you could use it with visitors coming in, but it's mainly focused on people going out of school. So some of the forms that we have, we've got an information form, and that's completed by the place you'd like to visit. It gives information about what they can offer. The school booking form, which is completed by the lead member of staff, and that is giving information about how the visit's going to fit into the curriculum, about the prior learning of pupils, and what you would hope to get out of the visit. And we also have an inquiry booklet template, which I will show you some snapshots of, and that is something that pupils can either complete during the trip, or they could complete it afterwards when they come back into class as a way of following up. So we're going to have a look at some pages from the inquiry booklet. So on our portal we host blank ones in various formats. Word is a great one because then you can edit it yourself. So you can download, and as a teacher what you can do, particularly, I keep going on about taking photos, but if you have taken photos either before or during the visit, you can add those photos into the booklet so they are already there for pupils. And they can either, if you've been able to add them in from your pre-visit and the pupils have got the booklet in their hands on the trip, they can be looking around for those places that you've put the pictures in of, or afterwards you might have taken photos during the trip, and then they can select which photos they want to refer to in the booklet. So it's editable there. This is an example that we have filled in for you, so you could see what a visit to a synagogue might look like as reflected on through the booklet. I've not put all the pages in there, but an overview of what the pupils might have thought about before going to a synagogue, what information they might have had or thought they knew about it, and then 6 encounters, so that's 6 particular artefacts or places within the building. There's space for a photo and then some reflections. There's also space for 6 questions. So again, these might be questions that pupils fill in before the visit and then they write down the answers they found out afterwards, or it could be something that they do as they go along. And then there's also space for them to reflect on what they really learnt and what they experienced while being there and the impact that it had on them. So we've got blank ones of those, and as I said, we've got some pre-filled ones as well to give you a little bit of inspiration. And we also have some presentation files, and these are photos of a mosque, a church, synagogue and a Gurdwara, and they are just examples of how you could, another way of following up a visit. So again, if you've taken photos, it's really important to take your photos. Then the children can annotate those either in their book, or they could make a PowerPoint presentation, however you want to do it. You could also kind of flip this around, and this could be your pre-visit preparation. So you might say, oh, you know, we're going to go and visit this church. Let's look at this presentation file of a different type of church. And that's a really good way of getting children familiar with some of the key features, but also starting to recognise that there is huge diversity within special buildings or places of worship. Some of these buildings will be purpose-built, some of them will be adapted. For example, I've been to a Hindu temple that used to be a church, and a gurdwara that used to be a secondary school. And a mosque that used to be a comedy club. So it's really important that children have an opportunity to understand that although they'll be visiting one example, actually, even within the UK, let alone across the world, there's huge diversity in what these buildings might look like. And I did mention earlier that I do know that transport can be a huge barrier to actually providing some of the enrichment that you, in an ideal world, would be able to give your children. So I've got 3 suggestions for having a creative work around that. So one is virtual visits. So some places of interest offer virtual tours. This might be live, so you can hook up in your classroom in your school hall, and you can be talking live to someone who tours you around, and that's great because you can also interact and do question and answers as well. You can also watch pre-recorded virtual visits. Again, there's lots on the RE Hub's website. They have got a special virtual visits section. Some of those are the TrueTube channel Holy Cribs, which has updated their virtual visits as well. You could also, if you are going out to a place of worship, watch those either before or after your visit, again to help children with that understanding of diversity. So you're visiting a mosque, but actually let's look at this video tour of another mosque. What similarities are there? What's different? Does anything surprise you? Something you can also do that is a bit of a halfway house is you could do a teacher-only visit. So sometimes actually taking 30 or even 90 children to a place of worship isn't going to happen. But you, the class teacher, might be able to go to have a tour, to be guided around and be able to ask questions. And you can take photos or videos. You could even ask your children to send you with some questions to ask so they feel connected. Something I like to do in this situation is to take a class toy. You can see Gudra and Al there, and take photos of the toy there. And that really, although the children can't be there themselves, that really does help them feel connected. So the best way to organise that is to contact the representative, the education advisor or representative from that particular place of worship. But also as well, there will be some times of the year when different places of worship have open days and invite people in as well. So even if you can't take the children with you, knowing that you've been there really does help them to connect rather than just a very impersonal virtual tour. And if you want to get some individual experiences into your classroom, there are an increasingly number of high quality videos available with individual people talking about their beliefs and their practices. Again, you could watch this before or after you do a visit, or you invite someone into school to help pupils get that idea of diversity of individual worldviews. So some of these might be general introductions to key concepts or beliefs or practices. For example, on TrueTube, again, they have the alien abduction series. But some of them are more personal responses. So for example, Real People, Real Faith, and you can find that via the RE Hub's website, has 6 different worldviews with 2 people from each answering different questions. For example, what books are special to you? So even if you can't get out of school, there are some ways that you can connect pupils with the local community or with people who are talking about their own beliefs and experiences. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. I hope it has helped give you